Welcome to the election year 2024 United States, and we're looking at Joe Biden in this video. I'm going to share with you several astrological indicators that he indeed may not even make it to the actual ballot as the candidate for the election this fall, but most certainly, given the state of his natal sky, not likely to be the winner. This is something I've said for a long time now. I already said that Donald Trump's chart was far stronger than Joe Biden's, but now I am recording this on July the 16th after we've had all of the turmoil and chaos of the upset of the assassination attempt. If you caught wind of any of my other videos that I am not political, I'm not pro-Joe Biden or anti-Joe, and I'm not pro-Trump or anti-Trump. I'm Canadian for one, and I'm pretty well apolitical. We're using astrology as a divination and forecasting tool. And if you caught wind of my Mars-Uranus conjunction video, I mentioned at least 3 places in there that Trump was in harm's way based on the sky. And I said as well that he may face an assassination attempt. And I also pointed it to the dates of July 15th, give or take a week before or after. And so astrology is a highly predictive tool. I reiterate the same concern in my Venus and Leo video that came out on July the 11th. And some people have timestamped where I've said that, and those timestamps are now pinned to the top of the comments of the July 11th and July 9th videos that preceded this assassination attempt. So I really don't want to tout my horn. Other astrologers saw it coming. Many other astrologers pointed in the same direction. I am by far not the only one. The beauty of this is that astrology works. And if you like to time your best life, then you want to look at your astrology, and this is what I helped you do. But in the election series that we're just starting off with, which is Joe Biden, I'll follow that up with Trump and Vance and everybody else and Kamala. We're starting with Joe Biden today. Recording on July the 16th. Anything that's in the news cycle that's already too late, like it's going to happen after this, I don't know about it. I apologize. That's what happens. Fast moving things, astrology and reality, right? Fast moving objects. First of all, let's talk about Joe Biden generally before I show you the charts we're going to be looking at today, which include his natal chart, his solar return chart, and his solar arc chart. For you astrology geeks, that's going to be very, very fun, but just in a very basic astrology. Just listen for a minute, right, to what I have to tell you. Joe Biden is a Sagittarius rising. It's the same Sagittarius rising of the United States of America. His Sagittarius ascendant, 3 degrees of Sag. United States of America Sibley chart, 12 degrees of Sagittarius. Netanyahu's also a Sag rising. Can't remember the degree. You see that these are all people who are going to be under a lot of distress and stress as Mars is just about to move on July the 20th into the sign of Gemini and be there until September 4th. This puts USA, Biden, and even Netanyahu, that's the other story, under a lot of stress as Mars, the warrior, the competitor, the opponent, the adversary, moves through the house of open adversaries and open competitors, giving strength to whoever Joe Biden will compete against and who will be his adversary. Well, clearly, if you're in an election year, the adversary is the other party or the other contender, more the contender, because houses 1, ascendant in Sag, and across the way, Gemini is about the one-on-one relationship. And this is not about parties, it's really about people. And so he faces a contender opposing him. Donald Trump's sun is in Gemini. Donald Trump's North Node is in Gemini. Donald Trump's Uranus is in Gemini. These parts of Donald Trump are opposing Joe Biden with Mars, the warrior, the champion, the hero, the active energy, the literally the competitor energy. But on top of that, Jupiter is also in Gemini. And when you add that up, Jupiter coming through the sign of Gemini, having crossed Donald Trump's North Node in his 11th house where his sun sits, and now heading into a collision with Mars in the middle of the 14th, 15th of August, all opposite Joe Biden, facing the Democratic National Convention in Chicago on the 19th. Add a few days of August, I would say that Joe Biden is in deep trouble. And it's strength to the others that are opposing him and not strength to him. Now, not only does Donald Trump oppose him, but also any other contenders to take over his role, whether it's the role of the presidency or the role of the candidacy for the next presidency term. Whoever opposes, competes against Joe is winning by virtue of a Jupiter energy with a Mars energy. It's the winning combination opposing him. So I don't know if there will be a competition between like an open democratic convention that allows for people to compete for the role and of the president, or if he will step away and let Kamala be the president before the election for health reasons, and she can pick a running mate. The reason that might be a good strategy, without going into too much detail, is go Google the 13 keys. And the professor who says, in order for Biden to win, the only strategy he could take is to step away from the candidacy, the presidency, let Kamala become the president before the election. She can choose a running mate, and that gives them the key of competition, contest, the key of contest, and the key of, I think, incumbency. But the 13 keys have accurately foretold 100% the next winning election, who wins the election. If that doesn't happen that way, he thinks that that Biden, if Biden needs to step away, then, and if he has to step away, then that's the only way to make it work. All right, so Biden stays in. It could be one of the very few times in history that this guy's 13 keys doesn't work anymore. Just like a bullet being shot at you, whizzing by your ear, that was predicted by a Christian prophet in great detail, is like, oh, the system is working magically. It doesn't always work linearly. All those 13 keys by that professor may not be accurate when extenuating circumstances like an assassination, pivot reality, because his 13 keys do not conclude the key of attempted assassination, right? To give a kind of favoritism towards Trump by people who rally around the underdog or the one who almost lost his life. Certainly, it will increase the Republican turnout votes at the very least, and maybe swing some independents now, or some undecideds. So now we're going to talk next. We're going to talk about the Biden story in alt layers. I want you to know that I'm showing you why I'm saying what I'm saying, and I'm explaining why I think Joe Biden is in trouble. And I've been describing his troubles before his troubles were obvious. So I will also explain why that is in his chart. Let's go ahead and take a look at Biden's natal chart to begin with. We'll follow that with the solar return chart. We'll follow that with some maybe a peek at his solar arcs, etc. So first thing I'm going to do is move over to Joe Biden's chart and share the chart with you. And I almost forgot to mention something simple. My name is Lori Lothian. I'm using the Western Tropical Zodiac. This is not sidereal astrology. I'm using the whole sign house system, and I include a lot of fixed stars and minor asteroids. If you want to check out the fixed star video, a minor asteroids video I just put out, I think I called it Trump's Guardian Angel ? It's because the asteroid angel, asteroid 11911, 9/11, was transiting over Donald Trump's ascendant, along with the asteroid Medusa, decapitation. Well, there was a conjunction of Uranus and Mars on his midheaven, decapitation, the Algol Medusa squaring his ascendant, his body. But even Medusa going over his ascendant made me think he was going to lose his head. A bullet was aimed at his head. But the asteroid angel was on his ascendant transit. That only happens once every 4 to 5 years. Depends on, the retrograde cycle, but it's every 4 to 5 years. And it's very literal. Astrology is uncannily literal. Take my amazing asteroids course and look at your own chart through the lens of the 24,000 named asteroids. It'll blow you away. Okay. Like I have stories beyond stories, like the sommelier with the asteroid of Bacchus and Dionysius, both gods of wine, sommelier, wine expert, on her midheaven, purpose and career. So I can tell you hundreds of stories about the devil is in the asteroid details. Okay. So there is one of the asteroid details. I just put that video out a couple of days ago. Okay. I think I called it Trump's Guardian Angel, or why Trump survived. Now, the reason I want to bring asteroids up is I'll bring a couple asteroids in today, here and there, to share with you certain features of Joe Biden's chart. And that's one of the things I love to do. One of my value adds, you'd say in the old sales marketing, over at most astrologers. I love it. I turned on to asteroids through Alex Alex Asteroid Astrology, Alex Miller, I think his last name is, in NCGR conference in September, Baltimore, 2019. I met him there. I took one of his mini breakout classes. I was turned on, never looked back. I was dazed and delighted. So were many of the other astrologers there who were in that webinar, but I don't know, that live class, but I don't know why some people just walked away from it and never used them. To me, they're very, very important. Because it's a matrix, guys. This is Joe Biden. This is his natal chart. A lot of you are aware of Joe Biden's natal chart because a lot of you who listen to my channel are very astrologically sophisticated. And I love that about you guys. So your comments, your questions, the way we interact in my classes are amazing because I love your sophistication or willingness to learn. So I'm going to teach you a few things. When Joe Biden was born, his ascendant is in Sagittarius, as is the USA Sibley chart. Therefore, he's very aligned with the destiny of the United States of America. And his vice president, by the way, Kamala Harris, if I remember correctly, it's a Gemini rising. I did a series of videos on Joe and Kamala in 2021 that I suggested she would eventually take over from him because of health reasons. I thought it would be during his presidency, not at this late stage, but I said during his presidency. So we'll see what happens there. Just to make sure that I'm accurate about that, I'm going to double check that Kamala Harris could be in the house of adversaries, opponents, and competition for him. But I do believe she is a Gemini rising. So just let me take a quick double check because I'm going to do a whole video on her as well. Part of my concern with doing all of these videos and why I'm starting with Joe is I don't think Joe will be here long enough to keep going, where I'll be putting all the other people in. As of the recording, Trump, J.D. Vance, and Tulsi Gabbard, who might be a cabinet member, well, as I'm recording this on July 16th, just this afternoon, there was a reveal of Trump calling RFK, Robert Kennedy, to gab about things and aligning with his anti-vaccine status, or he's not anti-vaccine, he's cautious and considerate health measures, RFK. But I get that. But colluding, and kind of trying to give him a sweetie deal to get him to come over to the Republican side, and he would give him a position. I think that was the intention of the conversation, to get rid of the votes that RFK may leak away from the Republican Party, for example. Yes, she is an ascendant degree, about 25 or 26 degrees ascendant in Gemini. This means that she is indeed an adversary, opponent, visible opponent to the president of the United States. And the only way that can make sense is if he ends up, stepping away for her to take over, or she's, maneuvering to do that. But I would just say with Jupiter moving through Kamala Harris's ascendant area as we speak, and will be there until next June, this can be a rise, ascendant on the Jupiter over someone's ascendant means kingship, rulership, leadership, power, right? Luck. So she's rising. Now, I don't see her, beating Trump at that point, right? If she became the candidate and she had a running mate, I doubt she would beat Trump. Maybe she would pick RFK as a running mate. That would be a strategic move to actually be able to get more votes, but it would be very, very dicey. Nonetheless, here's Joe Biden. People speculate, by the way, that his wife Jill is the power behind the power. He's born with the ascendant on Juno, the goddess of marriage and contracts and agreements and diligence. But his wife, his second wife, is actually in a technique. The second wife is actually Mercury in the chart. I'm not going to explain the technique, but Mercury's also the ruler of the house of marriage, and Mercury's in the house of what is going on behind the scenes. So there's a lot of Jill maneuvering things to do with his career behind the scenes. Also, in this chart, one of the things I would mention that gives me great pause about Joe Biden's ability to continue to be functional is the asteroid Hygeia and the planet Pluto. And what do I mean by that? Okay, so I'll show you a transit chart and you'll see what I mean. Hygeia is a goddess that was about health. Now, it can be preventative health and hygiene, but it's also the energy of doctors and nurses and medical community and healing and health matters. Oops, I didn't mean to do it that way. I apologize. Joe Biden, and then the transit chart. Oh, no, not Donald Trump. There we go. So I'm going to annotate some things for you so you can see what I'm talking about. Alrighty. Number one, we didn't have Hygeia, so we'll just add her. in my preferences, Hygeia is going over Joe Biden's moon. And that matters a lot because the moon is not just the body, it's also the mind. And the moon is also for a politician popularity with the people, but it's also his physical, body, his mind in the house of sickness. Hygeia is over his moon as of this date of my recording, July 16th. And she will retrograde back into Aries eventually. And that's where we had her during much of the Gaza health medical crisis, okay? Where Doctors Without Borders and medical people are trying to rush in and save people who's trapped between rubble and hit by bombs. And not only that, because Aries is war, but also the decimation of the healthcare system through bombing and demolitions and fighting. So when you see Hygeia in Aries, I didn't know with the North Node and eclipses expanding, and we could see all kinds of warlike situations like MASH units or Doctors Without Borders in war scenes taking place. Hygeia, though, like doctors and nurses and healers and medical issues, are now on his moon. And what I've noticed from this thing, it can mean health problems with his mind or body, but it can also mean a lot of medical opinion. And a lot of us know that after the debate and after the interviews he did and stuff, there's been an endless speculation. He has a medical condition of Parkinson's disease, and a lot of doctors are confirming that or chiming in with that. So there's a lot of health connected to his body, mind, energy that his moon can represent. The ascendant also represents your body, but in a more general sense, your whole character. So like you play the avatar on the game of life, the board game of this video simulation called life. And so anything that impacts his ascendant at 3 degrees of Sagittarius is also challenging or difficult for Joe Biden. Mars will go over his ascendant this fall, but we don't know this fall. What am I talking about? Not Mars. Mercury will be retrograding back and forth over his ascendant this fall. But in the meantime, there's nothing particularly hyper alarming to do with influences over his ascendant. But last year in 2023, he was going through an ongoing Saturn square to his ascendant, which can bring age-related problems, right? Senility, cognitive decline, or the old man, the Scenic Saturn from the house of the home, hidden from public view. He's having Saturn challenges. If you're just any old Joe, Saturn in your 4th house can mean you're living with an elder comes to visit, you feel alone or lonely in the home. Sagittarius, you know what I mean? But Joe Biden started in last year as Saturn ingressed here in March to become Saturn ascendant, old man, right? Old man energy, Senex energy. And with Neptune, that's you're also about confusion and illusion and delusion and mental fog, etc. It can be like that as well. Now, I'm not, again, pro-Biden. I'm not pro-Trump. Please refrain from partisan comments in my channel. Please refrain from personal attacks about me. I do not vote in the United States or Canada. I never have voted once in my life. So you can not call a girl who's never placed a vote in her entire life anywhere at any time at 62 years old that I have a political bias here. Thank you. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is Pluto. Pluto is important. Pluto is a first in a lifetime transit through Aquarius, retrograde here at 1 degrees of Aquarius on July 16th. But the more important piece of information here is that Pluto has been squaring Joe Biden's natal moon. I forgot to annotate to make it easy for you, but this is Pluto. That's Hygeia. That's Joe's moon. Pluto is squaring his moon. And that is a difficult angle, the nature of Mars, separation, cutting, severing, conflict, aggression, but just difficult, often needing to create critical and crisis momentum for change and decisions. And so Pluto is doing a very intense thing to Joe Biden's moon. Now, I'm going to just tell you this right now, just like remember, and opposing Joe Biden's moon, right, on the other side of the story, over here at early degrees of Scorpio in solar arc time, it's a progressed placement where the Pluto in Leo generation placement of Biden has traipsed all the way over to the early degrees of Scorpio at about a degree a year from Joe Biden's time of birth and day of birth, leading to a solar arc Pluto crisis across from his moon. This creates a perfect storm energy of a T square. And Pluto crisis, death, transformation, rebirth, like intense energies, including real death, actually, is opposite his moon. So, I mean, he's in frail condition. And it doesn't mean that someone's going to try to kill him. I don't think so. I think he may actually have a very challenging health moment that nobody is anticipating, to add to the spice to the drama and the soap opera that is USA politics at the moment. All right, so you got those kinds of stories and you get the vibe, right? How difficult that is, how intense that is. Now, in what's called the hand of the king chart, or the power behind the power, right? Anything 10th house, there's Joe Biden's 19-degree Virgo midheaven. Anything that's power behind the power. And by the way, Mercury moves into Virgo, doesn't reach his midheaven, but will be on his north node. News about Joe's career coming up July the 26th and 27, announcements and news as Mercury transits, right, over from Leo to his north node, and then later on over his midheaven. But there's a lot of retrogradation. So it's really the north node that we care about, July 26, 27, 28. News and announcements about Joe Biden's role in the presidency, the career path coming through our news cycle, July 26th, add 3 days. Now, that are destined and life-changing. How does that sound? But now I was going to mention the hand of the king can be the vice president, right? The one be the sidekick, right? The Sonny to the Cher, the Bill and Hillary, whatever, the sidekick energy, right? So there we go. So in the house of the sidekick, which can easily be the vice president, because it's like the hand of the king, the one advising the king, the one who can take power. If the king falls, this is the next person in line, right? Well, in that sense, the person who is in line could be a powerful female. Venus, in her entitled queen royal nature, and Pluto, right? So powerful female energy here coming through our sky as we look at November, as we look at July the 16th. And this is just going to be playing out the 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th. Look for news cycles about powerful women who could take over for Joe Biden. Would that be Kamala? Maybe, because in Kamala Harris's chart, this powerful Pluto female energy is playing out through Joe Biden's chart. Remember, Venus is just doing her thing in Leo. It's over Joe Biden's Pluto, and health matters when it does connect to her third house of news stories and media. So perhaps Kamala will be powered up in the media over the time frame of July 16th to the 20th. This video may come out after that, so this may be a hindsight narrative for you. Anything else I want to say? There's that Jupiter I mentioned, sitting over here in the house of open adversaries for Joe Biden, indicating strength to those who are competing with him or opposing him. And that doesn't look good at all. Like nobody wants a Jupiter in the other house if you're trying to beat somebody, right? The person has like the power of Jupiter in their court, so to speak. The conjunction that we talked about, the Uranus conjunction on fixed star Algol at 26 degrees with Mars, that happened on the 15th and 16th of the month of, it was more, 14th, 15th, 16th of the month of July, is happening in Joe Biden's sixth house of health and job. It's his job. I'm the president. And it's his health matters. Health and job matters. And the conjunction was here in August 1st of 2022. Mars and Uranus met here. And with the North Node, last time that happened was during 3,000 years ago, Alexander the Great. We haven't seen it since then. And so this energy of Mars, Uranus, August 1st, 2022, with the North Node happened to be in Joe Biden's sixth house, but more importantly at 18 degrees of Taurus and in a relationship to his midheaven, right? Trining his midheaven, which I would have indicated or maybe tried to portend was positive, right? Because it's flowing in a Jupiterian way to his high noon of his sky. But I don't know that it's positive because we're looking in hindsight since August of 2022. And what we've seen is shocking and surprising changes exacerbated by the North Node in Joe's health. I don't care if you think he's cognitively fine. He was walking off stage like a kangaroo the other day. He's turning around, in many videos over the last year, and he can't see where he is. Now, it's funny. Anybody who was watching Joe could see that. But if you are like mesmerized by the possibility that Joe is the only solution to the United States political climate, and you can't even see it, it's literally like the emperor has no clothes. You're not willing consensual democratic blue reality to note the obvious. And I'm not either. I'm Canadian. I'm watching the sidelines. I want to say it 100th time. But I could see there was something wrong with his motor skills, something wrong with his mind, the gaffes, the mistakes he made in talking, which get worse and worse. Whatever, something's going on. And it's just literally that shock and awe and surprise and inflammation in the house of sickness, where Joe Biden's mind and body moon sit that was playing out back in August 1st of 2022. And here we are 2 years later when the new cycle is starting and will last 2 years as well. And Joe Biden's likelihood of being the president of the United States, to me, is nil, because this Mars-Uranus Algol conjunction is squaring his Chiron. So let me get rid of the annotations and show you what I mean. This was the conjunction on malefic Algol, the demon star, and the decapitation of head Medusa story. And it happens to be where Joe Biden has his chironic wound of some kind. It's on his north node, but out of sign. And the relationship here is a difficult one called a square. Anything in the 9th, 10th, and 11th house is more or less in the public eye, right? It's the top of the sky, public eye, high noon at the OK Corral. He's going to have a wound of some sort to his reputation, perhaps, to his public presence. Chiron is about the wounded place in him with Hygeia and Pluto. Mercury coming over this Chiron around July the 24th, 25th. Maybe news about Joe's health that comes into the cycle and over the next 3 days. Let's go July 24th to the 29th. Expect major news stories coming out about Joe Biden's health. That is going to be a kind of a wound to his reputation of some sort. And Chiron here can represent the advice or a declaration by a hand of the king medical practitioner. So the doctor at the White House in charge of Biden having to make an announcement about Biden's health or something like that could be possible. Now, I told you I would look with you guys at the solar return. And a lot of people don't know what solar return, so let me explain it to you. When your birthday comes, the sun returns to where it was in the astronomical chart, right? In the astronomy of your birthday, not the calendar of your birthday. And quite often, the sun goes back to the degree it was sitting at the time of your birth, a day before your birthday, or sometimes a day after, or sometimes the calendrical day of your birthday. That's one. Best to cast the birthday chart, sun returning to where it was when you're born, therefore giving you a sort of a mandala or an Rorschach ink block test or a splatter, baking in planetary placements that run for 1 year, birthday to birthday, and giving you clues about what will happen at a birthday age. And I teach this class. I've taught it twice, solar returns, beginner and advanced. But if you come to my Sky Reader class in September, I will teach you some solar return tricks of the trade. And that course starts in mid-September, and runs for 6 weeks. The vibe here of a solar return on third, actually cast your chart for the place of birth. They used to call it solar revolutions. In the ancient Persian tradition, Arabic tradition, please cast your chart in the place of birth on your solar return. If you want to cast it for where you've moved to, you can do that almost like icing on the cake, secondary meaning, subtle changes of influence, but certainly it's going to always be your natal chart location where you keep casting that chart over and over again. Astro.com and AstroSeek have solar return charts you can cast, set it for the time, place of birth. That should be the default setting. You'd have to purposefully change it in order for it not to be set for there. Okay. So on Joe Biden's solar return, we're going to look at it like a standalone, and then I'm going to overlap it with his own natal chart. That's how I do it with the client. So I want to do it the same with you. Yes, I know you want a reading. My card opens up for new readings. My calendar opens up in September. I will basically give my Patreon community first access, and then other spots that are available will go to the general public. You want to be on my wait list. How to get on my wait list in the description box, click the more button, because I open the It's first come, first serve. I open it up, and within 24 hours, all spots are always filled. So keep that in mind. If you want to see me, you can do that. Or you can jump ahead on Mondays to my priority pass, skip the line. That's available on my website right now. I'm already booking those into September. And here we have it. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you're listening in the live premiere or later on. Thank you so much for helping this channel thrive so I can put more mundane and personal astrology out for you. Here we have Joe Biden's solar return chart. What do you notice about it, guys? It's a Leo rising chart. So his birthday last year. Why am I doing last year's chart? Because we're doing the election year, right? November 19th, 2023 to 24. However, I will also show you the 24-25 birthday chart as well. But let's just start with this one. And there's a reason for that. With the actual election in November, we kind of got the crossover energy between the 2 years. And so I'll have both of those charts up. But start with this one. First of all, his ascendant is in the sign of Leo. That's a mystic rectangle. He's trying to make lemons from lemonade this year. And he's not letting circumstance roll him under the bus of life. And he has a nice little water trine here, as earth trine as well, for some resiliency around financial and body matters. But nonetheless, he happens to be acting like a Leo. What is a Leo? It's a ruler, a king, but it's also entitled. It's being on the throne and not wanting to dismount the throne. And his ascendant in Leo is literally being transited as we speak all through the next month by the asteroid Medusa, off with their head. No, Joe Biden's not going to lose his head. He's going to lose his head of statehood. That's my take on it. And bottom line, Medusa is baking into his solar return. But like the idea is that now as I speak, the ascendant of the solar return chart has a Medusa asteroid crossing over the ascendant. Just keep that in mind. He's ruled by the sun. In a solar return chart, you say, oh, the ascendant is Leo. He's temperamentally Leo. You know, the best and the worst of Leo, right? Bold, courageous, big-hearted, flamboyant, willing to be performative, maybe, leaderful, or the downside of Leo. And, you know, the Mad King of Game of Thrones, or the Mad King, or the Demented King, or the entitled one, or the one who wants to preen on the throne. Who knows? I mean, I love Leos, by the way, but I'm just saying the dark side shadow of Leo is there as well. So he's acting like a Leo. Donald Trump's ascendant is at 29 degrees of Leo, and his Mars is around 26 degrees of Leo. That means that Mars is the sword that Donald Trump carries in his natal chart. His I am a winner, loser, martial energy is on the ascendant degree of Joe Biden, right? So Joe Biden's being attacked or being, severed or cut or harmed maybe by Donald Trump's ascendant 29 degrees on fixed star Regulus Mars energy. It's not a great place to put your body mind complex, if that's your opponent right under their sword, so to speak. Also, the solar return chart it says he's ruled by the sun. The sun is the ruler of the ascendant, right? Not really. In real life, Joe Biden's a Sag rising, and he's ruled by Jupiter. So we can do two things. We can say, where does Jupiter sit in the solar return, and where does the sun sit? His natal Jupiter, ruler of his natal chart, is with the midheaven and Uranus. You would normally say that is a good thing. You would normally go, this looks really strong. Looks like Biden's got this. He's got the win for the year. But Uranus brings the unpredictable and the shocking and the unexpected. Jupiter is weakened by retrogradation. He's going back, not forward, toward the midheaven, the high noon, the top of the sky of success. And Venus, the ruler of this whole shebang in the 10th house, is in aversion. Can't see it from the 3rd house. She's strong. She's in good dignity. He's getting good press. I mean, Venus and Libra library books, booklets, publications, and this is the house of the press and the media. And they've been pretty well until recently loving him up, right? The solar return chart started last year in November. So he was getting good press this year. That's what that means. But the good press is not able to witness, support, or help the ascendancy of the king. And a retrograde Jupiter is not a good position. It's going backwards, not toward the height of the sky, but away from the height of the sky. Now, the moon can represent his health and his body and his mind and how popular a leader is with the public. The moon is in the setting place on the descendant and technically just about to go into the darkness. And therefore, the moon in the setting place, because as the ascendant moves forward, so does the descendant. And the moon, the ascendant descendant axis is indicating a liminal cusp space. And in between the worlds, it's like he's on a threshold of going underworld or into the dark, but he's neither on the, he's really so close, guys, for 9 minutes and 2 minutes, 11 minutes away from being a moon under the sun, like under the horizon line, right? Technically, it's not I don't like that spot for the moon in his chart of his solar return. I don't like it at all. It's already night. This is a nighttime chart, right? It's 11 p.m. at night, 11:30, 11:01 p.m. And the moon is going to be going into a perilous liminal space. The moon is just on that edge. Well, I shouldn't say it that way. Let me reframe that, because technically the moon is moving away from the descendant. But what I mean is the moon is in the place where the sun sets, the setting place. Let me clarify that. So the moon on the setting place means Joe Biden may be setting. It makes me think Joe Biden's mind and body. Reminds me of a lot of people will literally leave the planet when things are happening to their midheaven, which almost happened to Donald Trump, and also on the cusp of the seventh house descendant. These are exit places from being alive. But Joe Biden here, having his moon in the setting place, reminds me of that old poem, I will not go gently into that good night. And I don't think he wants to go gently into that good night because of the Leo ascendant. But the sun is the ruler of the ascendant in the bottom of the sky, out of the public eye, in the dark dungeon of the sky. Mars is there. This is his home. I live at the White House. That's what that is. Mars is cutting, severing, and ending a place of where he lives. And you don't ever want the sun in the bottom of the sky when you're running for election, if you ask me. That is powerful in its negativity for a candidate running for office. And also the sun at the bottom of the sky can represent, because Joe Biden's life is to be a politician. So his career success and those who oppose his career success are solar Martian figures. A solar Martian figure is Donald Trump, Leo rising with Mars on the ascendant, cutting and severing his route where he lives and negatively impacting his midheaven by opposition. There's a way to time the solar return chart that I haven't been taught. I figured it out myself. It may be in some ancient text, but I've never been taught this, and I've been using it for 4 years, and it works. So one of the things to say is, when will the election happen, right? Exactly. And you can do this. There's 2 ways to perfect the months from a solar return chart. One is from the sun and one is from the ascendant. And if you perfect it from the ascendant, then his birthday month is November. So this is November, December, January. So he's getting good press in January. Joe's getting good January press. In fact, I think he did a few news appearances that went sort of well. So November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, and July. So what's been going on here in July, right? Where's the July story, since we're here already? Well, first of all, the end of June, the very end of June, June 27th, he did the presidential debate. So reminding you, starting to perfect by month, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June. So let me go again. Let me annotate for you. So I'm teaching you a tool that I normally teach in a class, okay? Here we go. This month for Joe Biden is last November. That's November of 2023. The second house is December, January, February, March, April, May, June. June 27th was the presidential debate. June 27th was Neptune. Neptune is confusion, delusion, illusion, mental fog, all that Neptunian miasma, and also viruses. And someone said he had a cold, but this was in orb of the presidential debate against Donald Trump. And he did not fare well. And you could see that might have been coming. You could have maybe anticipated that if you were using astrology. I wouldn't have gone on that debate if I was him. Saturn brings constriction, but sober-minded realism. And people got sober-mindedly upset or realistic about what was happening with Joe at the time. And then you move forward, right, into the next story, because over here we're having June, and then this is July. Right now, on July 16th, we had Donald Trump just recently behind us on the 13th, almost being assassinated. So this is around the time that this is occurring. And now we have a situation where there's a chironic wound inflamed by the North Node in the top of the Joe's sky. So it's just not a positive look, right, for someone running for office. That's what I'll say. And it tends to energetically feel like a death knell for him because of the square to 28-degree Pluto. So this square in the house of Joe's health and work, right, Pluto, to an indicator of time. You see, Chiron at 16 degrees can indicate the 15th, 16th, and 17th of the month of July. And there's a wounding here of some sort in the top of the sky to Joe Biden, squaring Pluto, the god of death and transformation in the house of health and work. And at this rate, you know, with this energy then moving into the North Node, more exactly squaring Pluto around the 23rd, 24th, and 25th of the month, 23rd, 24th, and 25th of the month of July, you're going to see more intensity around that wound that we begin to note happening now. And then if this is July, this is August, right? What's going on in August? Erratic, shocking developments opposing a solar leader figure connected to Jupiter leadership. That's at the Democratic National Convention on the 19th, where what sits on the 20th? Uranus. Shocking developments at the Democratic National Convention in August are guaranteed. Guaranteed. This is September. Nothing much happening, but ruled by Mercury, right? Where's Mercury? What's he up to? Oh, he's over here in the house of entertainers and the media. Maybe a bunch of movie stars come out and start to pump him up. I don't know. I don't think he's going to survive the Democratic National Convention. So this is September, and this is October, right? Now, November of this year is his next solar return because we use the whole sign system, meaning that we don't go November 19th to October 19th. I'm telling you, it's just all of November belonged to last November. This November, the election day, okay, the election day belongs to this solar return chart that he's coming into. So we're going to go into that solar return chart now. I don't think he's on the ticket even, but let's take a look at the November solar return chart. And also I want to take us back very quickly to his natal chart regarding November, because I can show you November in his natal chart and November in his solar return chart for the election of this fall. That will be the final way to see it. I was going to do solar arcs, but I think I'm going to overwhelm you with astrology. But I just let you know, solar arc Pluto is on opposite Joe Biden's moon. Well, real-time Pluto is squaring his moon, body, mind, health stuff in his house of work and sickness. So that itself is extremely hard. So let's go ahead and now let's take a look at the November 2024 birthday chart for Joe Biden, because what we see in the first house of that chart can represent the month of November. We can also perfect from the sun, meaning that where the sun sits can also represent the month of November. Okay. If that sounds like too much astrology, just hang in there. Okay. I know that if you haven't learned astrology, this is more of an intermediate story, but I'm showing you the reasons why Joe Biden will not likely make it through to the presidency at all. So I'm casting the solar return chart for us, and we're going to get started on that. And I don't want to make this too long. There will be a series of short videos about the election coming out with each of the candidates, whoever is left standing. JD Vance and Trump have a hot love affair with a Venus-Mars conjunction. They're actually madly in love with each other. Isn't that cool? But it's called a bromance. We call it a bromance. I think we'll see that they will have a bromance type of vibe if they do become the new leaders of the free world, so to speak. The United States always like to think they're on top of it all. Okay. Give me a minute. Subsidiary chart, next solar return, and here we go. Are you ready? I am. Joe Biden's last year's chart was Leo. He wants to stay in his kingship. He wants to be at the top of his game. He's got a lot of desire to keep his throne, right? The king is home in his throne, but unfortunately, the sun is in the bottom of his old solar return. Now, this is his birthday, November the 19th, 2024, Scranton, Pennsylvania. This is his birthday chart. 2 ways to perfect is from the sun or the ascendant, or move the chart forward by time. But we don't have to do either, because both the sun and the ascendant are together in the first house in the sign of Scorpio. Now, this means that this is representative. The whole month of November is what we're seeing here. And now we have Juno on his ascendant, which he has natally and as well in Sagittarius, which can be about, depends, but it can be about somebody else, a partner, a running mate, a sidekick, a marriage partner energy. Okay. But also the sun right here. Now, the sun in the first house should be and could be positive for Joe Biden. Solar energy in his house of identity, leader energy in his house of identity. What is not in his favor, in my humble opinion, is having Mars on the midheaven, which is to cut and sever. The only other way it can be is I'm a wartime president. Okay. So either he's a wartime president and we're at war, or maybe they delay the election, or he is having some serious challenges cutting and ending energy of Mars on the midheaven high noon of the chart. Reminding you that Donald Trump's ascendant and Donald Trump's Mars and Donald Trump's, energy of his first house is in Joe Biden's 10th house. It might be an interesting thought. Mars is definitely squaring the ascendant of the solar return. And, in Joe Biden's natal chart, the energy of Scorpio in Joe Biden's natal chart is the 12th house of isolation and hospitals. And often when I read solar returns, I teach people to read them. I say, where does your natal ascendant fall in the solar return? And where does your solar return ascendant fall in the natal chart? So in this case, the archetypal, I am this person, this is my avatar, is an ascendant in Scorpio with the sun in the house of hospitals, isolation, the 12th house of his natal chart. Also, it's not a powerful chart either if I flip the script, because his Sagittarius ascendant falls in the 2nd house of the solar return, which can be a weak place if you're reaching for the height of the sky. It's about self-worth, self-value, and speech. All right. And we have a debilitated Mercury in the sign that doesn't fit him, where he doesn't speak. I mean, come on, Mercury in Sag is like a great speechwriter, but there's something, confabulatory or unclear about speech for Joe Biden. So he has some speech problems, maybe. His ascendant is in a house of speech with a debilitated Mercury. His mind, his communication, his speech may be impaired. Now, I don't want this for Joe Biden. I don't want anything bad for anybody. I didn't want Trump to get hit by a bullet. I don't want anything bad to happen to anybody in the game of life. But there could be something like a stroke, right? With Mars squaring the ascendant, Mars rules cardiovascular issues, impaired speech, maybe. If Joe Biden had a stroke, that could be what we're seeing. Now, even though this may happen before the actual election and therefore before November, this tells us the circumstances of Joe after his birthday. Lastly, Mars died in the heart of the sun on November the 17th, 2023, in the sign of Scorpio. We last saw that in 1991. And it meant from 91 to 93, 1991 to 93. And also, again, here, we're going to say it's a story that has to do with what is coming to an end, what is coming to a big end. And in Joe Biden's chart, it's something to do with his 12th house, right? Where that death and rebirth energy happened. And it's also in a solar return chart where that big death and rebirth energy will happen. So I don't see this as a positive chart for Joe Biden. And I'm going to move into the next story. Let's get rolling and talk next, really, about, and I don't like Jupiter either, a greater benefic here, which can also mean kingship in the 8th house. right? That's not the ideal place for Jupiter I want to rise to the top of the pile and be a king by any means. When Joe was born, he has an exalted Jupiter in Cancer. Yes, in the 8th house, but exalted in Cancer. So, yeah. I think that this chart represents an aftermath that has nothing to do with the election in some ways. And I'm just sitting with it, because the moon in the solar return chart is in great dignity. And it does, flow to the temporary ascendant. But it's an 8th house moon in Joe Biden's chart. And here it is let me see, 27, 27, 27. Yeah. So, and here it is a waning gibbous moon, which is the shaman moon that has to do with death. So even the moon, shaman moon, waning moon, death, the moon is in his 8th house. Just something about this whole thing. I mean, I know I sound loosey-goosey. I'm partly just plain psychic, but I'm also trying to prove the story with astrology. So let's move over now and let me show you his natal chart, and I'll share with you what's happening in the timing of what we call a profection age. Every single age of your life, every single age of your life, you're going to be going through one of your 12 houses. And it's a repeating cycle. For example, 16, sweet 16, right, is a 5th house age. Love, romance, sexuality. But if you add that age 16, and you go 12 more years, you're back to that same 5th house story. 12, add what? 12 more years. That's when you go back as if you're walking around the 12 houses into that 5th house. So how old are you, guys? Come on, someone do the math because my brain's going to fire off. 16, 28. I got pregnant. I was a pregnancy with my first child at 28. The 5th house age, right? 40. A lot of people have late pregnancies at 40. Keep on going. 52. So this is a repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat cycle. We're going to do the rinse, repeat cycle for Joe Biden, his profection age, the Lord of the age, and by the way, what month he will be in as we move through the sky at this time and into the election. Let's get started and let's look at his profection story, and then we're done. I think I wasn't paused during this last little bit. I'm going to have to edit it from my video. Shoot. Now I'm worried about what I was and wasn't recording. Oh my God. So guys, I might not have been recording one of the charts I wanted to show you. This is just sucking ass. Excuse my language. I can't tell until I go back and look at this what I missed. Damn it. Damn it. I hope I'm not having to do this all over again. I have a terrible feeling I am. Here, I'm going to try to splice it if I need to. I'm going to show you Joe Biden's profection chart. So what I think I might have screwed up on, that I was recording his second solar return and I didn't do it. So what I'm going to do, in case I did, no, I'll have to splice it in. It's when you stop and start videos. If we're looking at the profection chart, let's go over there now. I think you're here. Me and my brother-in-law were talking. That's probably what you heard. Okay, so Joe Biden is 81 years old. This is his natal chart. And what I want to tell you is that profection age is going to indicate a time of his life in which a certain planetary body is the Time Lord ruler, and it also has a house meeting. 84 years old is here. If you're 84 years old, you are in your first house age right here, right? For him. And he's not 84. We take it back, 84, 83, 82, 81. He's in his 10th house age. It's all about his career and reputation. No kidding. That means he's ruled by Mercury, who's busy retrograding all over the place in what we call an elemental fire year, including a retrograde in Leo, Virgo, back and forth over the next August, September. That's not great to have all that action like zigzagging around when Mercury happens to be the ruler of your age and therefore your incumbency to become the president as a person running. But also, we would also note the following themes. We would start off and say, he's in a Mercury ruled year. Mercury does a lot of retrograde. There's a lot of zigzagging. Mercury spent a lot of time in Aries. Now he's going to be zigzagging through Leo, Virgo. And then Mercury's also going to be moving in November back and forth through Joe Biden's first house. There's that. Now, we also can say about a 10th house age, there's an aspiration to move into intense, yearning to succeed. But also, as we look at this, we can say, hey, and he is 81 years old. What else is going on? The impacts the Virgo part of our sky, and that in the real-time sky is Saturn. Saturn is stationed down here on his IC to retrograde, and Saturn has done that station retrograde already. I have a video out on it, and therefore this is in malefic energy opposing his ascendant, his midheaven, on a year in which he happens to be running for office again. So it's not an auspicious sign. At the same time, we can note that if this is a profection age, how would I do this? I'm going to teach you a tool. This 10th house story for Joe Biden is where we would say is his birthday. This is the month of November. That means this is December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July. So in the month of July of 2023 to 24 birthday, July is placing him right here. In the 6th house where he has his moon for his mind and his body, square solar arc and real-time Pluto with Hygeia, the asteroid, on there. This means that July is an extraordinarily challenging month for Joe Biden. We see that already with regards to what happened with the assassination attempt, and that will put favor to his opponent. Therefore, July is not a strong month, especially because in his life, this July is ruled by Venus, who's who's in her detriment in the sign of Scorpio, right? Not in good condition. So this is a weak month for Joe Biden, July. And we move into, and it's pretty interesting because we move into the month of August. We have the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, and he's got a Saturn influence with Uranus, shock and awe, Saturn, constraint, restriction, sober-minded realism, perhaps even some kind of difficulty that is really surprising. So we got a challenge there. It's ruled by Mercury. Mercury is in aversion, not witnessing the Democratic National Convention, can't see it. It's going to be a tough time to be in a mid-month August Democratic National Convention, to be moving through this part of the sky, if he actually makes it to the convention, without a critical health challenge by the end of July. So if he does make it, this is not an auspicious place. This is the house of his open enemies, the competitors, the competition, shock Saturn. He may be having a competitor. They may do an open convention and surprise them. And then over here, of course, we keep on moving, and this would be September, and this would be October. And then this here would be not November. We jump the fence on November because we move into this next profection age in November, right? So November, therefore, is here. November is his 11th house age. And I bet you'll say, well, isn't that a good house? Don't we want to be in the positive, goodness of the house of good fortune in the month of November when he turns 82? The whole month is really the month of this switch into this house. Sort of, yes and no. Because why? Venus rules this part of his chart. She's in the house of hospitals with malefic Mars. She's in detriment. She's out of her sign, right? So it's kind of a weak place to be in the month of November. And it's offside of his midheaven. And that alone gives me pause. Now, because I told you I was recording this video, and I think I stopped the recording when I started, I missed a bunch of recording material. You will see a splice somewhere in the middle. All right, you just will. All right, thanks for listening, guys. So my definitive answer is Joe Biden is not going to be the president. And Joe Biden is also maybe not even going to make it through health challenges to the actual person on the ballot. But I may be wrong about the ballot part, but I certainly don't think I'm wrong about him being the one who does not win the election at this point. for either not being on the ballot or being on the ballot and losing. That's a problem. I have to wait to see what happens. That, maybe someone else is taking his place, and then we'll have another story regarding the Democrat-Republican narrative. Thanks for listening. Ciao, ciao. Don't forget, like, subscribe. Just check out my Sky Reader. Go to my more box below. Everything you need to know about me is down there.